All right, are we live? Yes, everything seems in order. All right, we are live. Greetings and bienvenue, as is actually very fit, especially with the kind of type of villain I'm gonna do today. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Lord Shadows, and I welcome all of you followers of darkness, shadow scavengers, and villainy aficionados to another Villains Review live episode. And as I mentioned before, this time I have the honor to review, for me at least, from my personal point of view, one of the most fascinating villains I ever seen in fiction, like movies, TV shows, cartoons, comic books, from anywhere. Today we're going to review a villain known as V.V.Argost. Now, if you don't know who he is, V.V.Argost is the main villain from the very famous show from the era of Cartoon Network, The Secret Saturdays. Yeah. By the way, if you haven't seen the show, I will really suggest you to guys to have a watch because it's a really interesting show. No doubt about that. So V.V.Argost. Oh my god! I mean, just from my personal own experience, like it's just from the overall design, I really became fascinated with this villain. I really was. Like from the design, the white hair, that very unusual mask that he was wearing. And I mean, voiced by the infamous, Curry Burton. Which of course, he did a phenomenal job voicing that character. But anyway, ever since I was first introduced to the Secret Saturdays, I mean, I was really, into this villain. Like everything about it. It was so interesting. But basically, so V.V.Argost as a villain, he's basically this mysterious villain. With like a very mysterious past. With like very creepy looking. Who owned this very worldwide famous show called Weird World, and basically, he wanted to get his hands on the power of Kerr, basically, who is the first and most ancient cryptid, as of course they will call them in the Secret Saturdays TV show. So, and basically, he's the type of villain that he will do whatever it takes to get it. And of course, here I am today to review this character. Now, I mean, where to start? I mean, first and foremost, just from the overall character design and the overall creation, I just have to say, V.V.Argost is definitely one of the most unique villains I've ever seen in fiction. That's for sure. Like this guy, not to mention he holds elements of many different, elements that you will also consider kind of like classic, a little bit cliche, but also, like from many different, infamous, old, like from like folklore, mythological, and fictional, villains. Like for example, when I was watching V.V.Argost, like literally this guy. Well, he's not exactly guy. I did say he's a mysterious villain. The kind of first people will assume he's a human, but then later on, spoiler alert, like in the pre-ultimate episode, it is revealed he's actually a cryptid himself. More precisely, a yeti. He is literally a yeti, and when I saw him, I was like, a yeti that is a criminal mastermind. Well, I've seen everything. Now I literally seen everything, and I was like, ingenious. That's ingenious. They could have literally gone with a human. That Argus is basically this like very mysterious, creepy-looking human who wants to control, all the cryptids in the world. But no, they went with the idea. You know what? Let's make him a cryptid. Let's make him a cryptid. I think that will make the character more interesting, and it did. It really did. Now, anyway. So, I mean, as I mentioned before, like this guy has so many elements. Like, if we're gonna go into the cryptid territory, like this guy has the savagery of werewolf. I also noticed some of the elements of Frankenstein, and also not to mention the charm, the gothic, charm of Dracula. I mean, just the way how he talks and everything, the way how he stands. Yeah, I mean, like there's all sorts of reference you can get from this guy. Like seriously, if he wasn't a Yeti, you can literally put him. You can even put him in a category as a James Bond villain, literally, because he had every classic element that you can literally put him going up against 007, like literally. But anyway, let's dive a little bit deeper, about this character. So V.V.Argost, as I said, a mysterious figure that was later revealed to be a Yeti, who grew up, in the Himalayas, where usually Yetis are. Well, supposedly are, of course. You know what I'm saying? So where supposedly are, and basically a Yeti that goes like out, like in and out, scaring every single visitor, every single person who climbs the mountain, who also learned how to speak English through television. Right, with another like Yeti, like actually no, it wasn't a Yeti. I think it was like a oh shit, what were those called? It's not a Bigfoot. It's uh Sasquatch. Yes, it's a Sasquatch. So basically, him and another hairy fellow, which was a Sasquatch, they watched television and basically learned how to speak English. You know, so one thing I have to give him credit, like for being a Yeti, he's willing to learn. He's willing to learn, that's for sure. So basically, he learns English through television. He learns a little bit, humanity through television, and of course, through like the visitors that he basically attacks. And then basically later on, he decides to create a mask, go into the human world, and try to like create this like evil scheme, which, like I said, is to obtain the power of Kerr. This like first ever cryptid ever existed. So okay, so that's basically his origin, because like I said, this guy is this Yeti actually is a very classical villain, very classic villain, like very traditional, like cartoon was Saturday night or Saturday morning cartoon type of like villain with all sorts of like different like cliches, or as he would like to put it, monster cliches. Like especially the way how even he talks. I mean, like just from the dialogue itself, he sounds like a Shakespearean actor, literally. Like the way how he talks, and also use like some like French, like words and everything. Like, he literally feels like he's like a Shakespearean actor. He's like on stage doing like either Romeo and Juliet or even Hamlet or Macbeth. Literally, like that's how he sounds like. Such a like a villain that I would also add like he's full of like charisma, ego, like charm. Not to mention like the guy is a showman. I mean, just like again, just to start with the famous television program that he hosts, which of course is Weird World, which I think like if that was actually in real life, I think like Weird World would be widely famous. Yeah, because usually people love those kind of like creepy, scary, TV shows where they talk about like mystical creatures, legends, and all that. So I think like so I think like if V.V.Argost was a real person, I think actually that would work, in the real world. But anyway, so V.V.Argost, like I said, this guy for me personally is like it's one of a kind villain. I think like he's a very unique villain. With even though with those like classic elements and everything, I mean, like for example, the one thing I have to give him credit for is that the guy, instead of like using guns or gadgets or things like that, he uses creatures as weapons from like different like types of like bugs and scarabs and like all sorts of things that I've seen throughout the 3 seasons. This guy uses particularly like very unusual, but at the same time one of a kind weapons. Like that's for sure. I mean, they kind of look like they're gadgets, but they're actually living things, which mostly, like I said, they're bugs. Which again I thought like it was like very impressive. Also, one of the things I do have to give him credit for, like the guy has some combat skills. Like he went toe to toe, with like so many different times, against the Saturdays and the other like different characters, so you can definitely see the guy has a spine. Like the guy has some like combat skills, that's for sure. I mean, the guy's like this villain is like a fucking Yeti, so of course he's gonna have strength and like some combat skills, which I even still like thought like for a villain like him, because usually when you have someone like V.V.Argost, usually you think like he's one of those like mustachio twirling like villains. They usually just like talk, and basically when his plan fails, they usually run away. I mean, he sometimes V.V.Argost did actually basically retreated when he lost and everything, but not like in a very and sometimes no, not actually. Let me correct myself. Sometimes he even retreated in a very like Dr. Claw type of way, when he's like, just like Dr. Claw would say, "I'll get you next time, Gadget." V.V.Argost almost kind of did the same thing, with the Saturdays, So you kind of say like he even told them like, next time I'll get you Saturdays or something like that, like but still like he's also a villain that when you have like this types of events, especially like I said, Argus, because usually like like I told you, this villain really it feels like a villain that is like all talk, ordering around, like monologuing and things like that, without getting his hands dirty. He would just those kind of villains that would usually leave their henchmen, to do the job. But in Argus' case, I was actually proven wrong, because this guy is not just simply dialogue, or monologuing. This guy actually, this villain, this Yeti can actually get his hands dirty. He can actually fight, and I respect him for it. So basically, he proved to be a villain that is like like brawn and brains. So I do give like and those kind of villains, I do give them like really really big credit for that. That's for sure. Also, like I said, one of the things that also, again, he has like some very classical skills, like for example, manipulation. This guy is like a master manipulator. Like he, the way how he manipulated the kid of the Saturdays, or even like the opposite of the kid of Saturdays from the different dimension, and and many other different people, including like the Merfolk kingdom at one time. Like this guy really knows how to speak. Like this guy really knows how to basically change people's minds. Because that's one of the things, like especially when it comes to manipulation, especially the way how he's delivered. That also means that those kind of villains need to have like a little bit of a showman flair, and Argus definitely does have that. Like he usually really delivers powerful speeches. Not to mention, like I said, the way of manipulating others and changing their minds. So I do also give him credit for that. And like I mentioned before, like this guy, has like enormous ambitions, charisma, charm, the flares of a showman, that as well. But the one thing he also has, and throughout the show you can definitely see it really got him, basically biting up his ass, and that is basically his ego. His ego, which like you must have a little, you have to have a little bit to keep going forward. But if you get out of control, then basically no one's in the building anymore. And the same thing goes with Argus. Like this guy has a big ego, like a gigantic orange-flat ego, for himself. Like the way how he brags about himself, and like what he's gonna do, what he's capable of, basically, and the way how he will proclaim himself, that he's like above all cryptids, and how he will rule the world and everything. Like yeah, this guy has an ego, and basically, like I mentioned before, at the very end of the show, it really got him. It really basically got it. He literally got a big bite up his ass, basically. But not only that, like the guy also, he's technically a Yeti, but anyway, forget it. Argus also, the one thing we have to mention is that Argus also possesses arrogance. Like, yeah, I mean, like the guy is intelligent. Don't get me wrong. Like he really shows like some high level intellect, but also sometimes he can be naive. He can be arrogant. Like he also a lot of times underestimates his opponents. I mean, sure, like throughout the show, you can see sometimes, that he kind of like, makes sure that, that the heroes, they don't have an upper hand. But most of the time, you can see that he underestimates them. Like basically, like he sees them like they're not able to do anything against him and all that. But again, not to go too big, too much of the negative. Sometimes, he does, some certain moves, in which like, just in case, if the heroes are up to something, just to kind of like, get some, basically some basically some forward insurance. Let's put it that way. So yeah, I do have to give him credit for that as well. But now, when it comes to his goal, when it comes to his overall goal, okay, like I mentioned before, like twice, he wants to get the power of Kerr. That's what he wants to obtain, the power of Kerr. But if you look at closely what he wants, getting the power, controlling all the cryptids, where do you think this is leading? I'll give you a hint: power plus world plus conquer. What do you get? World domination. A very, like I said, old school classic villain goal. World domination. Because like basically he wants to use the cryptids to kind of basically rule not simply all of the cryptids, but also basically rule all humanity. As well, bowing down to him. Seeing himself as the overall supreme ruler of the entire world. If I have to put it in a dramatic way. But the one thing also, so yeah, I mean, again, very common goal, but but the way how he tried to do it, I do have to say, he was very near to do it. He was actually very near to success when it comes to conquering the world, especially at the very end when he obtained at first, he tried by trying to control the body of Kerr, and then of course he failed. They all went up in smoke. But then later on, he was trying to obtain the power of Kerr through the Saturday's Kid when he find out, spoiler, that actually the overall power of Kerr is inside him, the kid of the Saturdays, so he tries to obtain it. He got it, and basically he almost controlled every single cryptid around the world. So in some capacity, I do have to admit, I do have to give him credit because he almost did conquer the entire world until of course the Saturdays, all the other doctors, and of course the other cryptids who kind of rebelled against Argost, and everything. So I do have to give him credit for that. Now, like I said, there were times when he like I said, he will not underestimate his the heroes. He sometimes one thing I also do have to appreciate, he's self-conscious when it comes to certain battles or certain decisions and everything. For example, when when he was talking to the kid at the very end, when it comes to basically when you try to absorb his power, basically, so he can basically take it. How basically said, "Oh, you mean you and I going up against each other face to face? No, thank you." Even though he's a Yeti, which is kind of ironic because I think he can beat the crap out of a small child. But since we're talking about the Saturday's Kid, I mean, maybe he could have had a chance to to defeat him. But overall, I like those kind of little moments where you can kind of see that he's aware what kind of power certain hero the hero possesses. So they're you know what, if I have to take his power, I would rather do it with my brain. I'm not gonna do it in a very physical way because I would literally get my ass kicked. Anything is possible. But I do give him credit for that. That sometimes he can be aware. But like I said, sometimes he will try to do some certain decisions or movements in which he will try to stop heroes to be basically a few steps ahead. But again, a lot of times that is also shared with underestimating them. Now, when it comes to like I said, his goal is to gain the power of Kerr, world domination, and basically become all powerful and control everything. But one of the things we can all agree is that the guy is obsessed with power, which of course is another very traditional thing for villains to do, being obsessed with power. Now, the one thing, like I said before, at the end, he got a big bite up his ass, basically wanting power, because usually because sometimes you have villains that they already gained what they wanted, but they want more. Even after everything they did, they obtained what they wanted. They want more, and more. Like for example, with Kai from Kung Fu Panda 3. With the whole chi thing. He wanted more chi. He wanted to be more and more powerful. Same with Argost. He wanted, to have both powers occur. He wanted to have from his own world and the one from different dimension, where the evil kid Saturday was. And what do you think happened? What do you think happened then? What do you think? Well, like I said, he got a big bite up his ass, because basically when he got the other power of Kerr inside his body, it was too big to control it. It was too much for him. So of course the power itself destroyed him, which again shows that arrogance that Argus have. Like thinking like, oh yeah, he knows all this shit, but then later on, nothing. Yep. Nope. He got the power, but he was unable to control it. Just like, like I mentioned Kai, from Kung Fu Panda 3. He got a lot of chi, but even for him, that was too much. No matter how much he can hold it, it was too much for him. The same thing goes with Argus with the power of Kerr. Too much for him. And of course, that basically destroyed him. Now, I will, now the one thing I will mention, now again, Argus is like I said, a very, a very, very interesting villain. One of the things that I didn't mention is that the guy is a showman. Let's not forget, like the guy is a showman. Like everything about him is like the theater. Like from the monologue, from like his appearance to the way how he the way how he presents Weird World, which again, even today could be a successful TV show or even as a YouTube channel. Seriously, and again, I like this. Argus again is a type of villain that usually you don't see a lot. Like like a villain who is also well known in the world, but at the same time as a celebrity. Not just simply as a villain. So that's actually and the way how they did that, it was very, very impressive, very, very impressive. Now, one of the other things that Argus also we have seen to be shown is that he's a type of villain that he doesn't give a shit about his henchmen. Now, again, that's a very, very traditional trope when it comes to like the villains, especially like the ones who are the leaders of the group, where basically like they don't give a shit about their henchmen. Like for them, they're easily replaceable and everything, which sometimes really screw them up. Because like I think like overall, I think like for me personally, a perfect villain is always the one who kind of cares a little bit for his henchmen. And again, I'm not saying that he needs to care them for them like he's their father or something. No, but just to show a little care, a little respect, a little bit of compassion, a little bit of care, because if you show that kind of thing to your henchmen, it goes a long way. Trust me, it goes a long way. Even that way, even that way, at least, they will not worry for like a mutiny or something, I mean, sure, you can rule them, with iron fist, you can rule them with fear, all sorts of things, but I think like, I think like the perfect way to rule your henchmen is like, to try to find a balance between all those two, compassion, fear, iron fist, all of it, put together and everything. And of course, money sometimes. Now, when it comes to V.V.Argost, I think like usually, I think like the reason why they follow him is because I think like out of fear, money, and of course, because they're like, cryptids like him, well, with the exception of the Baron guy, who is basically a mercenary. Now, again, now one of the other things is, that one of the other things I also want to say about Argus is that, like the overall thing, about the mask, like I mean, the first time I saw him, I thought like, that like that's okay, that's a very strange character, but then you realize like, is that like his real face or not? And then like you think like, oh, then when you see the crack. When they first defeated Kerr, you see the crack on the, where you thought it was the actual head. That was you see the crack, and you think like, that's not his real mask. That's not his real face. That's actually could be a mask, And it was, it really was, Now, one of the things, like if I have to categorize like Argus, what kind of an evil he is, I would say, I would say I would say it's a tie between charismatic, diabolical, and pure evil. I would say it's something like of a tie between those three types of categories. You know, that's the at least that's the way how I would have seen him. Now, as an overall type of villain, I mean, V.V.Argost, like, definitely the one thing definitely I would have given him. If you're gonna talk about like what kind of a villain he is, he's basically a power hungry mastermind. You know, like that's the when you have like a villain like that, especially like those like cliches and classical movements and dialogue and the way how he thinks and the goal and everything. Yeah, he's basically a power hungry mastermind. I mean. Kind of like I mean, like I said, he kind of reminds me a little bit of like not simply N. Stavro Blofeld again from James Bond, but he also reminds me a little bit of like Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget. Like I said, the mastermind thing, being mysterious and all that. Like he kind of reminds me of that. Like again, because there's all sorts of like different resemblance to like this like mustachio twirling villain. From the classic golden age basically of villainy. He shares like some kind of like those elements as well. But like I did say from the beginning, he also shares some elements from monsters like werewolf, Frankenstein, and Dracula. Since we're talking about a cryptid. But overall, I mean, if I like to go to my final thoughts of V.V.Argost, because I literally I did say everything. Sorry, guys, we had a little bit of technical difficulty. Okay, so V.V.Argost, like I said, usually villains, you have types of villains like there's a reason why they're evil. There's a reason why they became who they are and everything. For V.V.Argost's case, like this guy was basically evil from the beginning. He never had a reason, to why he wants to become who he wants to become, why he wants to gain the power of Kerr. Like is he like some kind of a personal crusade or something? No, like he literally wanted to simply all he wanted was to simply walk among humans and basically complete his overall plan, which of course like I said, obtain power, rule the cryptids, rule the world, and that's it. Like I said, and again, overall his origin is very, very classic, a little bit interesting, but the way how he was created, he's a very classic villain. Like there's nothing tragic, there's nothing traumatic, there's nothing that kind of pushed him where he is. No, like this is like he is a very classic, like pure evil type of character, who just simply loves to be evil. That's it. Like no reason why he is who he is. Because again, he has a very classic, pure evil, no like reasoning, origin, basically. So there's nothing like when it comes to psychologically to talk about V.V.Argost, because like I said, he is like a very power hungry mastermind. He's obsessed with power. He is has a very gigantic ego. He has charisma. He has showmanship. He is like he has like that very like mustache twirling like charm. But and also high level intellect, which I mentioned before. Very Shakespearean, very like dramatic, like he's literally on a stage doing some kind of an act or something. So overall, like I said, everything about him is very, very classic, like old school villainy. Like there's nothing about him, which kind of I can go deeper about, like literally. So, but even still, like again, in my final thoughts, I mean, even still back, then I'm like, I still like I was impressed, about this villain. The one thing again that mostly impressed me was like again was the type of villain he was, the charisma, the Shakespearean elements, the way how he talked and the way how he talked, and monologue, in very like cliche ways, like a golden age classic villain. I also applaud him that he also was very near world domination, which again we don't see a lot of villains almost doing that. I mean, like for example, like he like I said, he literally almost conquered the entire world. Like if until like decided they stop him. I mean, like for example, the Music Meister in the Batman Brave and the Bold, like he also almost conquered the world. Dr. Draken from Kim Possible, like, with those giant robots, he also literally almost conquered the world. And again, the same goes with V.V.Argost, and I do give him credit. That he was, that he almost did it, basically. But in the end, he was screwed up by the heroes, which again, it's a very traditional thing, where good goes versus evil, So again, like when it comes to the overall rating, again, he's a very classic villain. He has very classic, good things, also very classic flaws. Like I mentioned again, like just for the last time, ego, arrogance, underestimating, your heroes, that hunger that he had for power, which literally in the end, destroyed him. Sometimes I think like when villains are searching for power, I think like they should know where their limit is. Like just get what you wanted to get and then basically shove off. Don't try to get more and more and more. Be satisfied for what you have here and now. But usually 90% of the time that doesn't actually happen. But still, that's what villains are for, right? Anyway, so if I have to give him a ranking, again, combat skills, high level intellect, the way how the master manipulator, the way how he schemes, his plans and everything, And also, one thing I forgot to mention, I do have to give him credit. Speaking of like classic old school, his overall hideout, the Weird World, is literally like a haunted mansion, filled with booby traps and beasts, and like other mechanics, which again, very cliche, very classic, but I appreciate it for the style and the type of villain he was. So even that taking in consideration, even though usually I'm more about like a castle guy and like lairs in the mountains, maybe sometimes even underground, But hey, who doesn't love sometimes having a evil lair as a haunted house? Who doesn't love that? Get a little bit of Halloween theme there. So overall, I mean, if I have to give him a rating, I would go with for V.V.Argost. Again, I don't want to go too low because like he does have some like positives, as a villain. He actually also really impressed me. And he's, for his uniqueness and the types of weapons he uses and everything, I'll give him. Yeah, I can go much more higher than that. I will give him a 7 out of 10 as a villain. Again, it's not bad, but it's also not great. Because like I said, he has very classical elements in his persona. When it comes to schemes, the personality, the weapons, the way how he monologues, like the knowledge of like I said, of manipulation, intelligence, combat, the way how he's interpret, like very classic, mustache twirling villain, type of level. So yeah, overall I will give him as a villain like a 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10, which I think like it's a fair rating for someone like V.V.Argost. I think it is. So with that, boys and girls, all my shadow followers, we are done. We have come to another end, to another Villains Review episode. So with that being said, you guys know the tradition. Comment, subscribe, drop me a like. Give me your own personal thoughts about not just simply like V.V.Argost, but you can also give me some personal thoughts about the Secret Saturdays TV show. What you thought about it? Did you ever watch it? Overall personal thoughts about V.V.Argost. All of that in the comment section down below. And until next time, Laura Shadows signing off. See you next time to another Villains Review episode. But until then, later, fuckers.